granting me the privilege of co-chairing this committee with my esteemed colleague, Senator Cornyn. The title of the hearing, Unfit to Serve, captures a sobering and undeniable truth. President Biden was mentally unfit to carry out the responsibilities of the most powerful office in the world. Given his mental incapacity, the American people deserve to know who was running the country the last 4 years. Today, as we seek to answer this question, it is deeply disappointing but not surprising that most Democrats on this committee have chosen to all but boycott the hearing and have failed to call a single witness. They have chosen to ignore this issue like they ignored President Biden's decline. Their absence speaks volumes, an implicit admission that the truth is too inconvenient to face. By refusing to engage in this critical examination, they abdicate their responsibility to the American people. This de facto boycott is not just a refusal to participate, it's a refusal to serve the American people who deserve answers about who is truly leading their government. President Biden's decline did not suddenly begin in June of 2024. It was a persistent and obvious truth that was evident for years to anyone who was willing to see it. This reality did not require special insider knowledge or investigative reporting to uncover. We didn't need Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson to tell us what millions of Americans could freely observe with their own eyes. The truth was glaringly obvious. Anyone who was paying attention could tell that the emperor had no clothes. Nearly a year ago, I took the historic step as the first U.S. Senator to formally call for the invocation of the 25th Amendment against President Biden. I sent letters to every cabinet secretary and the vice president laying out the urgent case. Our nation was effectively without a leader. The absence of a functioning president wasn't an abstract issue. It inflicted severe consequences on our nation, consequences that touched every aspect of American life. On border policy, our nation's borders were handed over to the radical left-wing element of the administration, throwing open our borders to 15 million illegal aliens, an unprecedented immigration crisis that pulled our nation into chaos. On foreign policy, haphazard and reckless decisions placed our warfighters in jeopardy, escalated conflicts around the globe, and led to a catastrophic humiliation on the world stage that claimed the lives of 13 American soldiers, including one Missourian, during the disastrous withdrawal from Kabul. On the economy, rampant inflation drove up the cost of life's essentials, making them unaffordable to countless hardworking families. In the realm of culture, the restrictions of free speech closed down churches, targeted traditional Catholics and parents at school board meetings, and let an unelected class of left-wing radicals degrade, attack, and lie about our history and our heritage. A poisonous anti-Western, anti-American ideology that had once been confined to elite university classrooms suddenly became the official White House policy. All of this was done not in isolation. It was sustained, defended, and covered for by an alliance of elite institutions, from the media to the so-called expert class to big tech to the federal bureaucracy itself. When we speak of collusion among elites or the so-called deep state, we're accused of being conspiracy theorists. But this was no theory. It was plain and overt, out in the open for everyone to see. For 4 years, we had a president who could barely string together coherent sentences after 6 p.m. Yet, this glaring fact went unreported, undiscussed, and unaddressed. Why? Because the Democrat Party, corporate media, federal bureaucracy, and big tech companies collaborated to conceal the truth from the American people, not out of ignorance, but because it advanced their own interests. In the absence of a functioning president, chaos took hold. An empty vessel occupying the Oval Office becomes a puppet for those surrounding him. Many elected officials, including some in this chamber, have used auto pens, a mechanical device that replicates a signature. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, so long as we are the ones actually making the decisions. But under President Biden, the auto pen became a Trump symbol, a symbol of an absentee president and an executive branch directed by nameless, faceless aides that no one outside of Washington, D.C. had ever heard of and no one ever voted for. It was the autopin presidency, a government run by committee rather than a leader chosen by the American people. By contrast, love him or hate him, we all know President Trump is in command of his presidency, and he is the one calling the shots. It is plain as day that President Trump is actively making the decisions, whether announced via Truth Social or signature. Under President Biden, that transparency and certainty evaporated. We cannot confidently say that the decisions bearing his signature were the will of the president or his Politburo. That goes doubly for his social media posts, including his decision to drop out of the 2024 presidential election. We did not know if it was his decision or posted on his behalf after a palace coup because President Biden was mentally unfit to serve. The corporate media played an indispensable role in this cover-up, systematically suppressing discussion of President Biden's condition. As we will demonstrate in the video evidence presented today, dissenting voices were silenced, and the truth was buried. It was not a passive oversight. It was deliberate. It was a deliberate campaign to shield a narrative that protected the interests of the most powerful. Even members of this very committee, some of whom served alongside then Senator Biden when he chaired this very committee, defended his mental acuity for years. Now Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson offer a convenient narrative to absolve everyone involved. The media lacked access, the family was overtly protective, the cabinet was incompetent, and Robert Hur said the president was merely a well-meaning man in aviators who liked ice cream. It is the tired, evasive refrain of the politician caught in a lie. Mistakes were made. Yes, mistakes were made, and every participant in the cover-up, from the media to the cabinet, is jointly and severally liable for what may very well be the greatest deception in our nation's history. Even their apologies today are framed in a way that absolve them from responsibility for this crime against the American people. They apologize for having missed the story. They didn't miss anything. They actively chose to ignore or run cover for the people in power. The Biden cabinet rarely met, and some members, like former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, deliberately distanced themselves from the president to maintain plausible deniability. Even members of this committee were part of the Great Deception. The Monday after Biden announced he would not seek re-election, one member called the idea of invoking the 25th Amendment outrageous, insisting the debate performance does not reflect who he is or his capacity to govern as President of the United States. Another member repeatedly vouched for Biden's fitness, declaring, Joe Biden is fit, capable, and ready to serve another term. And later, this is a man who is sharp, who is on top of his game, who knows what's going on. Yet another, during the 2020 Democrat presidential primary, alluded to Biden's decline, but quickly retracted his remarks when it became politically expedient. After the debate, yet another member praised Biden's strong delivery of remarks to NATO as evidence of his capacity to lead. The purpose of this hearing is not to interrogate Biden officials or partisan reporters, though they should be held accountable. Instead, our focus is to identify and rectify the systemic weaknesses that allowed this situation to fester unchecked.
Because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.